Men make the absolute worst leaders, and you will never convince me otherwise. I've got some more examples for you. I'm going to give you some from my own personal life after we watch this.
Say, I will prove to you that women should be leaders. But I watched and did
Escape room.
easily a thousand games. And we had groups that were all male, all female, and co-ed. And let me tell you, the men, they would just not communicate with each other. If they found something, they wouldn't tell anybody how they did it. They'd just be like, I found it, or whatever. But more often than not, they would leave each other behind. They would leave each other.
I'm just going to summarize the rest of what she's talking about. She said with the groups of just women, they would all communicate what they'd found, what was happening. They just had a team spirit. Shocker. And they're more in the spirit we either win together or we lose together. It's not like me versus all of you, or being the best, right? Not that competitive crap. And then the mixed men and women groups, the men would basically gaslight the women, and then steal the victories of the women. Being like, look what I found after a woman report. Anyway, classic. None of this surprises us, right? Let me give you just an example. As a former outdoor wilderness guide who worked with all ages, children, teenagers, adults, and this is absolutely what I experienced. And then I also, at the end, I'm going to give you a tip on what to pay attention in men in your personal life is if they think in a community spirit or are just super selfish and not thoughtful. So when I was guiding these backpacking trips, especially with all boys, the biggest problem we had on those trips, other than them conflict and wanting to beat each other up and stuff like that, was leaving each other behind. They really, and we kept saying the person in the back sets the pace. So if the person in the back cannot hike as fast as the person in the person in the front has to hike the pace of the person in the back. And you have to use self-restraint, and you just have to slow down. You have to. It's not safe to go a mile ahead of the group because we can't tell you if something's wrong. We're gonna have to go chase after you to bring you back. Let's say someone falls or gets sick, or we have to turn around, or there's weather. Bro, stop going so fast. It was so annoying. It took them forever to figure it out. Once they had more of a community spirit, they got better at it. We also learned that we would have to put the slowest kids in the middle so that they wouldn't be full of shame and slow the group down out of frustration and feeling left behind. Anyway, we had to figure out so many strategies to make these boys not leave each other. And I've already gone over plenty of times what terrible leaders men are in the outdoors in general. Y'all know I used to be a raft guide. That's me right there. And I'm sure I'll talk more about this, but you cannot pay me to go with a male raft guide ever. They'll literally flip their boats on purpose because they don't think about the feelings, the fear, the danger, or literally anything but their own ego and them wanting to have fun. Not all of them. I know some great male raft guides, but most of them are so selfish and reckless and are not thinking about the emotional safety of people, and that's how they get killed. I've literally seen 2 deaths on the river because of male ego. So I am not just talking here. I care a lot about this. As a lot of y'all know, I was also a backpacking guide, hiking guide, all this stuff. I worked for Outward Bound for a little while, but I worked for a lot of other companies too. And one of the things that we would do with kids was called Whiteout. And it was this game. You could play it anywhere. You didn't even have to be in wilderness to do this. The kids would wear blindfolds. And then we had set up a course with a rope, just a simple rope, usually a pretty thin rope. And we would make it go over rocks, under trees. It didn't really go very far. But with a blindfold on, trying to find your way, just holding on to the rope and listening to what the person in front of you is saying was about, creating a teamwork mentality. And, the whiteout was named after okay, imagine you're in, climbing Everest or, in a snowstorm or something, and you can't see anything, and all you have is this group and the rope to guide you to safety. And I swear to God, most of the girls naturally would communicate what they were going through to the person behind them so that person wouldn't, fall over this rock or, wouldn't get hit in the face with a branch, So imagine just a group of kids all holding on to this rope, and one person's like feeling, they're like, okay, there's a branch there. Okay, so you're about to come to a branch, and it's about like eye level, so you need to reach up over your head and push the branch up and bend down, and watch out, there's a rock. Okay, and they literally would just narrate what they were experiencing, what was coming, how they dealt with it to the person behind them. And the whole goal is for then that person to narrate all the danger, the strategies, and all the things you need to know so that they go through it successfully and don't get hurt. Let me tell you, boys, not all of them, some of them actually had been taught how to be thoughtful. But the boys who were raised in classic patriarchal indoctrination would just get through it. They'd take all the advice of the person in front of them and then just keep going. And there'd be these huge gaps between the kids, so that even if they wanted to communicate, they couldn't because the kid was so far behind. So patience, waiting, making sure the person behind you is keeping up with you so you can continue to communicate that information. Making sure the person ahead of you isn't getting too far. So saying things like, hey, are you still there? What's coming next? Is literally about communication and keeping each other safe. And I swear to God, we would have to put strategically place kids in this game so that the ones who are more emotionally intelligent and thoughtful could role model how the hell you get through this thing. So this stuff starts young, y'all. And then we'd always have to debrief it and be like, what went wrong? And if it went well, why it went well. If it didn't go so well, why didn't it go so well? And they'd be like, well, James left me. I didn't even know where I was. You know what I mean? So this is something that I have been observing and experiencing and even seeing life-threatening consequences because of for a long time. And when I realized recently when my husband and I were coming home from a friend's house, we were riding bikes. Now I am, maybe the more reckless one of our couple. And I love riding my bike. I ride my bike all the time. And my husband has vertigo. I mean, bikes are okay, but every once in a while it's challenging. And so what I've realized is that I have to let him go first so that it forces me to go slower and just take my time instead of just trying to go so fast. Or if I am leading us, in these single lane bike lanes, that I'm constantly making sure that he is right behind me. And it reminded me because when either of us is leading, as soon as we come across a red light or something like that, if we realize the person behind us isn't going to make it in time for that yellow light before it turns red, we stop and we wait. Even though we could get through it, that person can't. I cannot tell you how many men I have followed in a car. It's not always just men, by the way, but so many men. Tell me if you have experienced this, because I've followed a lot of men in cars, on the way to a party or on the way to out of town, anything, right? And I hate it when men leave because they'll just be like, oh, yellow light, and keep going. And sometimes you have to keep going because you don't have time to stop. But the thoughtful ones will realize, oh crap, and they'll pull over and they'll wait and they'll look in the rearview mirror and they'll be like, okay, here she comes, and then they'll pull out in traffic just in time for you to get back behind them again. It seems so simple, duh, right? You wouldn't believe how many men are just oops, and they keep losing you because they just cannot think of anyone but themselves, even when it's as simple as driving to a party or to go do something cool. The idea of literally thinking about someone but themselves for just 30 minutes and the impact of their actions on someone else behind them for just 30 minutes, 20 minutes, even 15 is just too much for them. And so I started to realize if I ever follow a man in a car or a bicycle or anything, and he's constantly leaving me behind, that's the kind of husband he's going to be. Not like I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to marry this person or not. But when I think that's the kind of friend he's going to be, that's the kind of coworker he's going to be, and that's the kind of husband he would be. Me, and you're just an afterthought. Now, I know that I don't like to give any hard and fast rules and red flag, because there's nuance to all of this. Sometimes there's another reason. But in general, when I'm dealing with men, the first thing I'm thinking about is entitlement and selfishness, because that is what patriarchy has. That is what the thing that makes them destroy relationships and even get people killed in the wilderness and just in life. Entitlement and selfishness. Refusal or incapable, but I don't think they're incapable. They just refusal to think of anyone but themselves. And why would you put people who think like that in charge of groups. Leaders? No thanks.